Hello, welcome to the Target Hobby QAV210 build video. In the kit, we are provided with 4 2204 2300 kV motors. We are also supplied with 4 ESCs that are 12 amp 2S to 4S with BL Holy firmware on them. We have mounting screws for the motors with an Allen wrench. We have motor guards. We have 4 props. These are gem fan 4-inch 4.5 pitch bullnose props. They come in, the kit comes with black ones and orange ones. We also have a Maytech Systems mini power distribution board. This has places to put on your ESCs and then places to connect the battery. And this has 2S to 6S input and then has regulators for 12 volts and 5 volts. Kit also comes with what could be extra standoffs or it could be used as landing feet and a prop wrench. So let's put this together. So first we're going to mount the motors. And so what you'll notice here is we have the motor guards and with the motors, and in the kit you'll have 2 different size screws. You'll have one that's slightly longer than the other one. And so with that, the reason they supply that is that it's whether or not you decide you want to use the motor guards. So I am going to use the motor guards. So I'm going to select the slightly longer screw, which makes up for the thickness of the motor guards. So I'll go ahead and mount these 4 up and we'll come back. So I've got the longer screws here, I've got the motors, and I'm going to put the red guards up front and the black guards in the back. And one thing you want to notice is that, remember, we got the 2 different motors. We got the counterclockwise and the clockwise, and so the ones with the silver caps you want to put it in the front right motor, the black cap front left motor, and it's opposite. So then the back left would be silver cap and the back right would be black cap. Alright, I've got the 4 motors installed. One of the things I found is that when this frame has been milled to pretty exact dimensions, so there's not a lot of slop in it. So when you put the screw in, put one of the motor screws in and don't tighten it up all the way, and leave it just a couple turns out from tight, and then continue to install them around in a circle, never tightening them until you get to the very end. It makes them a lot easier to get them all in properly. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to start laying out the distribution board and put the ESCs on there. But I'm going to go ahead and take off this top plate so I can get to it easier. Alright, so I've taken the top plate off. Now I'm going to leave it intact. That way when I start fitting things up, I can make sure there's no interferences. And so these are the 2 camera side mounting plates and then the front camera plate. So I'm going to mount up the power distribution board in here, and I got to figure out which way is the best way to turn it. But then at the same time I'm going to use some little nylon standoffs to offset that from the board slightly. I'll probably use one of these shorter kind right here. Alright, here's what I'm thinking. The battery connects on right here to the battery terminals. So you want that going toward the back of the quad, because that's where the battery will come out. So that pretty much decides it for you. So I'll mount this here, and then the individual ESCs, instead of wiring to the closest one, I think what I'll do is I'll go to the other side. It doesn't matter, but it'll make it a little easier to wire up and be a little more flexible. And I'll tack and solder them here on the other side like that. So these will come over here and these will come over here. Alright, so I got the board mounted on the standoffs, and I'm just going to tin some of these pads. Alright, so I've got the ESC and the battery pads tinned. So what I'll do here is kind of figure out how to come in like this. So about that long there. Alright, I got the ESCs soldered up to the distribution board. And one of the things I always like to do is on these, when I put these together, I like to make sure that I haven't, the solder hasn't bridged across any of these pads. And so what I'll do is I'll come over here in the negative tab and I'll just make sure, you know, go to each one, positive and negative both. There's negative. There's positive, so it should show open. There's another negative, so I should see continuity there. There's a positive. Okay, so no connection. Another positive, no connection, and then the last negative. Alright, so it all looks good. You just want to check that because you don't want to plug things in, the battery in for the first time and have a problem. Now I have not soldered the battery connector on yet because I kind of want to get it together and take a look and see how long I really want it, because it's going to come up through here. So I'm probably going to shorten it up quite a bit. I'm probably going to bring it back about like that, because the battery will be sitting up here and it'll have a pretty long lead on it too, so this doesn't need to be super long. Alright, went ahead and figured up how long the battery lead ought to be. So this is 3.5 inches from here to here, and it works out pretty good. Alright, I'm getting ready to put on my flight controller. Before I did that, I went ahead and pulled up the little pin and took out the positive leads off all the ESCs. And so the reason I did that is because I plan on running this maybe on 4S, and since I don't really need to supply 5 volts from the ESCs, I'll supply 5 volts from the distribution board. So I just soldered on a little connector and I'll be able to connect this up to my flight controller. Okay, for my flight controller, I've chosen a Seriously Pro Racing F3. I've got it wired up to my receiver, so I'm going to go ahead and install this. Alright, so I've got the flight controller on now, and so just use my standoffs here, and I just ran the front, or I guess the back ESC wires in between the two boards there, ran them out front. And so all the extra ESC wires are out here, so I'm going to be able to bundle those up and tuck those underneath here and still have plenty of room for the camera to mount out front. So do that next. Alright, here's what I'm going to use for the camera. It's a little 700 TVL NTSC CCD, and so I'm going to use that along with a little VTX here. This one happens to be 32 channels. Alright, I've got the video transmitter, an extension wire for the antenna, and the lead that goes to the camera from the video transmitter. Also have my receiver here. Go ahead and plug that in. Now it's just a matter of putting the camera in. Okay, so to put the camera in, you use just this mount. You don't need to use the side mounts. These are only necessary when you use the I think the 26mm cameras. So this just kind of goes in like this. It's longer one dimension than the other dimension. You want this longer dimension to be at the bottom so you can get more room for the tilt. So I did end up, because my camera had a little lock screw for the lens over here on the side, I did have to open up file just a little bit to make a little bit bigger hole there, a little groove on the side. So we'll go ahead and put this in. I've got the camera mounted. Just use the front plate. Got my receiver mounted right behind it. I put some electrical tape around the wires to make it the right thickness for the battery lead. And it clips in real nice right here. So next up is to flash the firmware and make sure the motors are turning the right rotation. If one is not turning the right direction, you just simply switch any two of the three wires and it'll switch rotation. I got my USB port in the back here. So I'll go ahead and flash the firmware, test the motors, and we'll be ready to put on props and take it out for a flight. Alright, I flashed the new firmware on the flight controller. While I still had the props off, I went ahead and synced all the ESCs within CleanFlight, and now I've installed obviously the props, and so now it's time to take it for the first test flight. Alright everybody, I just got back from mating this quadcopter. I rented on a 4S 1300 and also used a 3S 1000. I have to say it flies great on both batteries. Didn't have any problem with the motors getting hot or the BECs getting hot when I ran it on either size battery, especially, I was worried about the 4S. It performed fantastic. I have a 250. This is way faster than a 250, and I think it's just because it's a nice lightweight but still strong frame. It's all about power to weight ratios. This has got incredible punch outs. I'll post some videos separately. I have to say I'm super pleased with this. I know that this is going to be my favorite quad. Target Hobby did a great job selecting the components, the motors, the ESCs. The frame is nice build quality. It's thick, strong. I'm very happy with it. So that's the end of this build video. Please let me know if you have any questions down in the comments, and thank you for taking the time to watch.